The sad part is the fewer voices, so I do apologize to you for leaving, but if we can continue to convince advertisers that people are listening to your live and local, that's going to be the difference between AM radio, local AM radio, dying or surviving.
So I've done radio on and off in Denver for about 25 years. He's done it for a little less, and he's retiring from it. Steffan Tubbs from KNUS. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, John, for having me.
November 3rd, you're calling it quits because of the drug problem you're having? Is it because you're going bankrupt? Is it your green card is running out? What?
I'll tell you, it's the homeless issue.
No,
I have decided after you set the table with, taking a bag of human feces to the city and county building, I decided that's what I want to do full time.
Just clean up the city. No, you have done about 20, 25 years of talk radio.
More news.
More news.
Yeah.
But talk from KOA to KNUS, you've been a fixture in Denver talk as the share of talk radio continues to, and you've been a real voice holding Colorado's politicians accountable, and talk radio, which was so important as it keeps getting less important, breaks my heart. You've decided, no, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
And so everyone's wondering, why? Why? You're calling it quits. November 3rd, last show. You're getting out just before the election because you don't want to see what happens in this election.
That's actually not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing,
to be honest.
So really, honestly, I've asked you off air many times, and you keep giving me the same answer. I don't believe you. So let's try it this time.
Yeah.
Why retire now? You're young. People grow old in these positions.
People also get this.
What is that? What is the curling of the finger?
Come see me after the show. People in this business don't often get a chance to, and I want to say before we even get into anything, how grateful I am that I'm able to go out on my terms. And I mean that. And you got to admit, I've told you that off the air multiple times as well. You just don't get to call your shot in radio traditionally of giving a 2.5 month notice. And the reason really is everything I've told you, and I've told you the truth, is I just feel like it's time. I'm going to miss it. There is absolutely no question that on Monday, November 6th, 2023, when the prior weekend there are, stabbing, shooting, auto pedestrian hit and run, Tay Anderson does something, Mike Johnston's getting ready to do his next Denver homeless, we don't want to call them sweeps anymore, homeless cleanups. That first week especially, I know it's going to be hard, John, but I'd rather feel like I'm going out on my terms, going out on top. I feel like I could probably still do it another 20 years, but I'm sure we'll get into it.
Why not do it another 20 years?
Because my heart is telling me to do something else, and I know what that is.
I don't care about your heart. I care about having... People think I care about them. No, I care about having voices in Denver, in Colorado, that will hold powerful people and powerful institutions accountable. And that is becoming less and less.
Yeah.
There was a time that talk radio was as powerful as the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News and the news stations, the TV stations. And this is when Mike Rosen and Pete Boyles, their voices, whether you love them or hate them, were a counterbalance. Maybe not quite as big, but they could hold the paper's feet to the fire. Now, those newspapers don't have that sway. The Rocky is gone. The Post is, it's an advertising circular, if anything. It's a newsletter. Fortunately, the Denver Gazette is up and running as an alternative and growing and growing. But talk radio is also shrinking and shrinking because people don't want the commercials. People don't listen to AM as much. We have podcasts and shows like this that you can watch on air or on YouTube. And please check out the YouTube channel, IITV, on youtube.com. And so those voices keep going. So losing another voice, when you've got another 20 years in you, that...
All right, I'm gonna make an announcement.
That
I won't
angers me.
leave. I don't want to anger my friend John.
Good.
No, everything you say I agree with. And you know what? I look back at those legends like Rosen and Pete Boyles, and I was able to work alongside them in a much different capacity. I mean, I'm only doing talk radio as I leave. Not even a full 6 years, but it's been the best 6 years of my career, believe it or not. And I have had the opportunity to be blessed with an incredible career. Started at KOA in 1994, working the much sought after 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. shift. And then April 19th, 1995 happened, and I was able to get down to Oklahoma City after the bombing, 6-7 hours after. And that kind of set me on the trajectory of my career. And, it's never lost on me that what kind of launched me as a newsman was an absolute tragedy. Yeah. And then I would go on to, first trip back after leaving in 1998, first trip back to Colorado after taking a job as a national correspondent in Los Angeles for ABC News, was April 19th or April 20th, 1999 for Columbine.
Right.
And so, it's very weird. And when you're in this business, when you're catapulted or even getting a boost to the next level, whatever that is, whether it's a promotion or a new job, that it's on the backs of people's worst absolute miseries. That's never been lost on me either. Those stories, 9/11, Columbine, Oklahoma City, the tragedies here, the Aurora Theater shooting. I mean, we've had so much here in Colorado. I've tried to be this media, whether it's personality or just person that's blessed to have this career, to never forget those folks either. And I will miss that. I don't think that I will lose contact with some of the people over the years that I've met through these various tragedies, but I don't know if it's a sense of guilt that...
I think a lot of guys who have a conscience in news understand good news happens slowly. It's like building a brick wall or building it.
Especially today.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. Bad news happens in an instant.
And a lot.
And that's what's news. News is tragedy. And that's, and the whole system of news is made for tragedy. It's made for fast. Nobody wants to say, hey, we're now 1/100th of a step closer to our goal. That's not news. We're now 100% in a massive tragedy. That's news. I want to get back to that thing. You curled your finger and said, when the station manager says, hey, come here, I want to talk to you after the show today. And I know that feeling. So on KOA, I loved having the late night shift. Late night shift was great. I had the 10 to 1 a.m.
Should still be local, by the way. Should still be live and local that time slot.
I agree. Well, what's great on KOA is 50,000 watts. And so at night, all the other stations have to power down, but because it's a heritage station, it stays up. We blast to every state in the country, Canada, Mexico.
Yeah,
so
I think they said, John, 38 states and 3 countries at minimum at night.
Yeah, and so we blast everywhere. So truck drivers hear you because they use it, and so from 10 to 11, people are going home from their night out. From 11 to midnight, people are kind of nestling into bed, and you get them. From midnight to 1, the freaks come out, but you have these long, luxurious conversations with listeners. Rick Barber, late great Rick Barber, said, what's great about doing the late night shift, and he had the shift after me, is that management leaves you alone. They don't even know you're there.
Right.
They say they don't touch you. It's like they don't move you or touch you because it's like the couch you're afraid to move because you don't want to know what's underneath it.
Mentioning Rick Barber, when I was doing the 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the mid 90s, I worked alongside Rick, absolutely, I look back, I didn't realize at the time, but I look back now and go, that was a mentor.
Yeah.
What a great
Yeah, it
human
is.
being, gone way too soon. I remember it was just several months before Rick Barber passed when I was doing Studio 12 at Colorado Public Television. I had Rick in for an hour, and we all knew what was going on. And none of us are going to make it out alive, but man, just wonderful characters and people that I've had the chance to work
and
with.
Denver. He was Denver, and he was weird. And the night show
And the callers
was weird.
were weirder.
And the callers were weirder. But that finger of, come on in. And it was told that, hey, corporate is making a decision.
It's always that way.
Right. And corporate's making a decision. KOA, we're the only station that has live late night shows. So we're just going to put in a syndicated show like everybody else because it's a big conglomerate now. And hey, we love you. We're not firing you. You can do fill-ins. You can do this and that. Which it's fine. But I really miss that, and I did it for 10 years. And the people that you touch that way, you don't find out about until much later. It's like, I used to listen to you every night, and it was great. In the same way, listening to Rosen in the morning was a big influence on me and the people that you've talked to. So that finger wag, hey, so how much of your decision of leaving now is because you read the writing on the wall and say, radio continues to contract and contract, and are you seeing that there could be that, hey, Tubbs, after the show today, come on down to my office for a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truth be told, the contract that I'm under is we fire you today.
Yeah.
After the show, before the show. There's no strings attached. The benefit to me, I guess, and contracts always benefit management. Everybody knows that. But the on the flip side, I could say today, I'm done. So it's unlike any contract that I was ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Because usually they have like a 6-month buyout. They can fire you, but they pay you for 6 months. Really?
I mean, I'm not going to give you my social security number, but I'm telling you behind the scenes, that's how it is. And it was the strangest contract with 710 KNUS that I'd ever signed. I was also, man, let me try this talk thing. Let's do this. Let's have like the first year be horrible, and then let's, I would not want to go back and listen to my first or second weeks of shows. Some would say, how about, up to present day? But I feel like I really got into a great niche. I think that we really shined on our program right around early 2020 and the start of COVID. And I realized that, hey, having an afternoon show gives me an entire day basically to be a newsman. And I was there for the Governor Jared Polis daily COVID updates. I'll never forget. I can't remember if I've ever even shared this with you. I go to that first Emergency Operations Center COVID briefing by the Governor of Colorado and other, members of the health community. And they had a chart, and I was sitting right in the front row. And I think there's actually a picture. I don't know, it was an AP picture, but I'm on the phone with the station telling them where I am and everything. And I just was so perplexed. I'm like, what? And again, this is early on in COVID. We don't know, if you believe some people, we're all going to be dead in the next 7 to 10 weeks or whatever. But I'll never forget, there was something, it was either a video graphic or on an easel. And they said, the potential R0 number could mean that up to 35,000 Coloradans could be dead within the next month. And it was right, I'll never forget that number. Maybe it was 32, 35, but it was 30,000 plus potential deaths. Thank God that didn't come close. But at the same time, I realized, this is a pretty big story. One thing I don't know if you know, I am proud about this. It probably sounds cocky, but I went to management and I said, we're going to go to 4 hours. We're going to go to 4 hours. And they said, okay. And so I was basically for 3 years, 3 to 7. And I thought it was a brilliant decision. We ended up, advertisers, came on board. So I think it was the right decision. And, then it was cut back last year to 3 hours, and like I said, I'm going to miss it.
Well, for Salem, who owns KNUS, to their credit, most of these stations now are franchises. It's a franchise model. For those who don't know how modern radio works, you and I grew up in the WKRP in Cincinnati model, which was a wonderful model that, some guy owns a radio station. Some stupid guy bought a radio station.
And somebody's going to do a turkey drop.
Yeah, turkey,
right?
I swear to, as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. If you don't get that joke, you're just
sorry, we're too old for you.
Yeah, right. And you have a personality, and the personalities mesh with the city, and they try things, and it's a quirky little station. Once the FCC allowed stations to be bought up and have several stations in the market, and then allowed conglomerates to have many of them, then the race was on to gobble up as many stations. And
I think it ruined it, John.
it might well have.
I did my undergrad thesis and my master's thesis on the deregulation of radio, broadcast industry. And boy, if you're, a shareholder with a big company and revenue is good and times are great and times are not great today, it looks great. But gone are the mom and pop kind of, smaller. When I started, and, I've been in Colorado and doing, parts of 4 decades, nearly 25 years of radio, but my career in total, I'll retire with nearly 34 years. And I did ABC Network. I started out, in college with smaller stations. But I thought, the Communications Act that Clinton signed back in the 90s, I think that started the deregulation of the industry, allowing a station or a company to own 2 stations in one market, radio stations,
an AM and an FM.
But I mean, it's with all due respect, you go to, iHeartMedia in the tech center, and at one point, it's 7, 8 radio stations. That's the shrinking of independent voices or different voices.
Those listening might not quite get it. What happened is you'd have a company buy up literally 1,200 stations.
Yeah.
And the idea was, well, we can run them all centrally and get rid of local voices, which I think is the magic of talk radio. And I think of growing up with KBCO when it started, and it was a really unique music station. So it was K Boulder CO, Boulder, Colorado. And it really catered to the people of Boulder. And I think it was Scott Arbo, who was the music director. And so it was really focused on this one little town. Well, now indie music stations have one guy for that market, and they program the 100 stations that are indie. You look at 103.5.
It's called voice tracking.
Yeah.
And they can, hey, happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Well, it's Tuesday morning somewhere.
Or they have one guy, you listen to the Fox, classic rock. Well, iHeart, it's just the model. They've got one guy who programs the classic rock station for 120 stations.
Yep.
And they do imaging for each station. So it's 103.5, the Fox. But in Peoria, it's 102.3, the Bear, whatever it is.
Right.
And there it goes. But when it comes to talk, you can't really do that. So they fill it in with national hosts, which is fine. But the magic of talk is local. It's what's happening in your town, your city, your neighborhood, your state.
Yeah, I say all the time, I can cover a breaking news story. I know how to deliver it, either television or radio. If it's an international story, I can be at a news desk and I can do that. I can do a national story. I can go to a city and cover a disaster, tornadoes, floods, fires. But I always like to say, and especially in the swan song of doing radio and talk radio, is I love to be hyper-focused, hyper local, live and local. And that's why, and you've had me on before, and I thank you to talk about Denver and Decay, our documentary film, to really get in the craw of these local politicians. You do it. It feels good, but it's right.
Because there's no one else to shine a light on local politics.
Wait, you mean local television?
Right.
We could do an entire I mean, the local television, for the most part, in the city of Denver is abysmal.
Sycophantic.
Yes.
So,
Sickening.
and media only looks at Washington. The problem is not Washington. The problem is right here in Denver, right here in Colorado. And if we're going to fix Washington, we have to fix this.
Right.
And so, and also the key, you know, that you're listening to it is when they can't pronounce Vasquez or they call Louisville, then you know somebody's doing the traffic report in Pittsburgh.
Correct.
And that's what they have. They look at the screen, they go, there's a tie-up in Louisville
Right.
on Vasquez Boulevard.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's a sad, it's one of the sad parts. There's still many great things about this business. The sad part is the fewer voices, so I do apologize to you for leaving, but if we can continue to convince advertisers that people are listening to your live and local, that's going to be the difference between AM radio, local AM radio, dying or surviving.
So out of all the years you were focusing on local issues, let me ask you, which one hit you most emotionally? Which one did you look at and say, this appalls me the most? And you've taken on, you know, so many local issues, so many local politicians, but out of all of them, which one did you say, this one is so very wrong, to the point where you couldn't even think straight? Put one of them.
Has to be post George Floyd, the summer of hell 2020, as I call it. And that led to the birth of Denver in Decay and our documentary film, but to see what was allowed and tolerated in this city. And then it was almost by happenstance that, and obviously I'd come downtown, I'd go to a Rockies game every now and then, come and see you. I'd be in this area, but not a lot. And the back-to-back nights of riots, that was it for me. I'm like, I am going to go full bore into this. This shouldn't be tolerated. And
When
then
you say this, what do you mean exactly by
lawlessness?
this?
How about lawlessness? Seemingly zero control by the city, by elected officials. I don't call them leaders. I call them elected officials. They let down the city and county of Denver. And I don't even live in the city and county of Denver. I used to. But then it goes to the state let this state down. And then in all of that quagmire, John, is wow, there's a lot of homeless. How did we get here? So if I had to say the one thing locally, because the national fentanyl issue that impacts every neighborhood almost in this freaking state, it seems, that's another thing. But when it comes to the local issue, well, I lost friendships. Michael Hancock and I would have considered not good friends. I never went to his house for dinner or anything like that. But he was one of those guys when he was a city councilman, always available. Press availabilities. Hey, how you doing? Give me a hug. Fist bumps. Seeing him in social gatherings, at cocktail parties. It was always great. And then there was Denver in Decay. And when he got word that we were doing, as he told my friend Mandy Connell on KOA, that movie, first of all, it's a film. Sounds much better. You eat popcorn at a movie. You get educated by a film. So I lost that political friendship. He never, ever, we haven't spoken since. We had one right before the pandemic. I saw him at a press conference, gave me a big hug, pointed me out in the crowd, hey. Now, I'm fine, my ego's fine. I couldn't care less. I wish Michael Hancock the best, but he gave Denver the worst. What a failure. Abject failure as a mayor. But it's not just him. You look at the homeless, you look at just seemingly the lack of authority, holding people accountable. One of my arch enemies of all time, I don't even know if she knows who I am. Beth McCann is the most pathetic elected official, even I think bigger than Hancock. Bigger than Hancock.
This is the Denver DA who doesn't charge people with crimes.
No, because she's a progressive, maybe George Soros funded, whatever. Rest in peace, her district attorney career, because don't think that I didn't make a deal on my show about, playing the hallelujah that she's not going to seek, re-election. But just to wrap it up, it's not just Hancock. Denver's road home. I guess I'm just dropping the bombs of what I think all time. I think Denver's road home was the all-time, at least to present day, the all-time Denver in decay, fleecing of the taxpayers, fleecing of donors. The Denver's road home. We're going to end homelessness in 10 years under John Hickenlooper. What you want to talk about?
The turning on of the spigot that led to everything we have
right.
now.
You want to talk about a clown show? And then it was before that. Wellington Webb, who I think, I always got along with him. But before that, Federico Pena. And to me, sorry, I'm a conservative. I'm not sorry. Federico Pena, Wellington Webb, John Hickenlooper, Michael Hancock, what do they all have in common?
Yes, they're all D's. But so was McNichols.
Before my time.
Yeah, all city mayors are D's. Not all of them are let everyone out of the jail. When you point to the George Floyd riots and the fact that our governor let the Capitol be vandalized, let statues be crumbled and pushed over,
and then when they're removed, then never come back.
Then never come back, which means they win. To say that these statues go so more politically correct statues can be replaced, go, oh, what's the symbol there? Instead of having a deliberative process of saying, maybe that statue is out of touch with the times. Mm-hmm. Let's have a discussion about it. No, you just get angry, push it over, and get it replaced with something else.
Let me ask you this. I'll play host for a second.
Please.
As we tape this, next week I've got my final interview, my farewell tour, as I've been calling it, with Governor Jared Polis. I've known the guy for 15, 20 years. I get vilified I just get destroyed on the radio because I actually have, I guess, the audacity to say, personally, he's been nothing
affable.
but kind.
I've known him for 25 years. He and I get along well. We've had beers together.
And how do you feel about his politics?
I believe he is the most dangerous governor we've had in our history.
Okay, so I'm pretty much there with you. But how dare we compare? But let me. I'll name a name, and that is the governor. Back-to-back nights of riots. How many press releases and tweets and Facebook posts do you think the governor of Colorado made around that time? I don't even have to wait for your answer. 0. Do you know that it took Michael Hancock 6 weeks to acknowledge any unrest? And that's according to my research. I remember because I play it all the time. Mayor Michael, this was a riot, Hancock. That's when he said, when they surrounded the DPD headquarters, that's when he held a press conference. That's where I go, John, to, if you're not going to say anything, you're guilty by omission. You tolerated this. You tolerated it. And the reason why I still bring it up more than 3 years later is because that set the tone, period.
When I tried to hold the governor accountable for the mess, the response was, it's a city issue.
I don't follow Denver politics. Do you remember that line?
I don't follow.
That was the line. I still play that on the show. I don't follow Denver politics. Time out. Your office, the governor's mansion, though you don't live there, that's in Denver.
I also needed to remind the governor, via a column I wrote, that the Capitol building is state property. The park in front of the Capitol, not City Park, but this lot of land in front of it, Centennial Park, I think is what it's called, is state property. And he has complete and total control. The state administration does. And it was a campsite. It was a protest site. It was a campsite. It was an Antifa site. Antifa, which is not violent, by the way, site. And they took it over completely. And when the governor said, well, this is a city issue. No, that is a state issue. Your building, which was graffitied and vandalized, that's a state issue. And after I made that perfectly clear, it wasn't too much longer later that all of a sudden that was fenced off and then cleaned up. that isn't leadership.
And good for you, by the way.
And the problem is they don't want to take on the left of their own party. We're seeing that now in the legislature. These are reasonable people. They understand this. When I say reasonable, I mean that they understand that they cannot stand up to the progressive whack jobs in their own party. Whether it comes to taxation, whether it comes to budget, whether it comes up to the cancel culture, whether it's Michael Johnston or Jared Polis, they refuse to stand up. They can use Republicans as the boogeyman, but they don't exist anymore. Republicans don't exist. They are a nuisance. Republicans are a fly flying around the Capitol. They are a micro minority, a super minority.
I don't even know if they're a nuisance, John. I mean, really, at the end of the day,
They have
here
no
in
power.
Colorado, there's no power.
The House, super majority Democrat. Senate, near super majority. Administration, Democrat since, Ritter, Hickenlooper, Polis. Courts, completely Democratic. Big cities, with the exception of Aurora, Democrat. But the media loves to pick on Republicans. Why? You're beating up cripples.
Well, yeah, but most of the time, what do I have to lose, right? I can tell you because I'm not going to have to answer to it much longer on the air, but I will. The Republican Party in this state is a joke.
Agreed.
Okay, it's a clown show. The ouster of Kevin McCarthy, at the end of the day, is that even going to matter? If your own, conservative party doesn't like you, you're a rhino. If I had $1, I wouldn't retire. If I had $1 for every time, I'd keep it going.
Right.
I mean, and I couldn't care less. But the state GOP, I say all the time on the program, you all can act like what Congresswoman Lauren Boebert did, on aisle 17, caught on Narcan 9's, surveillance video they secure from the Buell Theater. We can't have any video evidence of White House cocaine, but they got Boebert and, squeezy touchy. But whether it's Boebert or, a lot of people are controversial right now and around Ken Buck or whomever it is, the state GOP chair, the left is laughing. They're laughing at whether it's a national deal and voting out Kevin McCarthy or here locally. I mean, we can't win an election. We can't win a race for the most part. And we're all, it's like that Spider-Man meme pointing at each other. It's like, no, it's your fault. No, it's what? I don't know. I will miss. So that whole thing, John, a long way of saying I will miss being able to talk about that or have the ability to.
All right. Next steps. You're too young to retire. I know your cocaine habit. You don't have the money to retire. So what in the world are you going to do? You got some plan? You got a sugar mama? What?
No,
what?
I do not.
You don't have a sugar mama or you don't have a plan?
I have a plan for about 6 months. I don't have a sugar mama.
So you have 6 months to find a sugar mama.
That would be following in your footsteps, of course, looking and looking. I'll tell you what comes next is the continuation of my next documentary film, Mountain Time Media. I've got an excellent team, and we are very close to finishing up principal photography on a documentary that'll come out in May of 2024 called Devastated, Colorado's fentanyl crisis, I think that's the subhead, but it's called Devastated, and it is focused on fentanyl's deadly impact on Colorado. Look, if you and I had unlimited funds, I'd say, hey, John, let's go over to China, talk about these precursors. Let's try to get some interviews. Then let's go down to Mexico and let's try to get an interview with the Mexican president and government. Let's talk about all that. That all is known. But what's not known is the impact of fentanyl on Colorado. I'm telling you, and I've told this, kind of plea or made a plea. Would you rather have that talk with your kid, no matter how old, by the way? I mean, my kids are 20 and 23. I had this talk with them within the last 2 years. They're young adults. They can vote. They could join the military. They don't need to listen to dad anymore. But I made a point, and I hope that everyone will. I'd rather have them know that, you know what, right now, 6, maybe closer to 7 of every 10 illicit pills out there contain fatal dose of fentanyl. I'd rather have that talk with them, maybe tougher than even the birds and the bees, than to plan their funeral. And we have talked with addicts, we have talked with district attorneys, we have talked with sheriffs, we've talked with the DEA, we have talked with politicians, and I know we're wrapping up, but guess who really doesn't want to talk about the fentanyl issue? That would be our friends on the left. To me, that this is a partisan issue in this country. How are we allowing this to occur without doing something? And I don't know what it's going to take.
So you're again going behind the camera, as you did with Denver in Decay. So you like alliteration, Denver, Decay, Devastated,
Yep.
The next movie. After that, you don't leave 25 years in radio without
34.
a plan. 34 years
Almost
without
25
radio.
in Denver.
So vacuum cleaner repair.
I'm thinking of looking into a full-time position at either the Independence Institute or Complete Colorado. No, actually, seriously,
We'll talk.
I don't know what I'm going to do. And
We'll
you know
talk.
what? It's weird, man.
You know what?
It's a little exciting. It's a little scary.
You know, pay at Independence Institute is going to make your KNUS job look mighty lucrative.
Will you make me this promise that we will stay in touch? And I'm not blowing smoke as we wrap up, but I am so proud to have known you for so long. I think I met you for the first time in the 90s when I was here the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, you know, congratulations. I know we joked about off the top of what you did at the City and County building. I mean, thank you for coming on the show. You know, my show, because, I mean, look, you're also a very, very important, I'll bust your, what's any day of the week, but you're very important, and thank you for what you've done.
You're a good friend. We're going to stay great friends. I want you to find a way to keep your voice going. That's what's important. And what's interesting about this next chapter is it's not going to be in radio, but I've known you long enough. You're not going to stay quiet. So that's the important stuff. Steffan, congratulations on your early retirement, and good luck finding that sugar mama. She is out there. You just need to find the right, very wealthy, very charitable, nearsighted woman.
If there's one person I will not take relationship advice from, it's you, my friend. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Until
brother.
next time.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.